Welcome to the 5-Day Blues Guitar Challenge. This is just one lesson in a series where I'll teach you 5 different super fun blues progressions that will help you reboot your guitar practice. And if you want to learn the guitar practice method that has changed the lives of over 21,000 guitar players, you need to check out my online guitar reboot workshop to ensure you get the most out of your guitar practice. Just click the link here in the video or in the description. All right, let's get started. The beautiful thing about today's lesson is that you're going to learn something once, and you're just going to move it around. Your fingers are going to do the exact same thing. You're just going to change their location on the fretboard. So I'm going to call this the blues jitter bass because it has a bass line concept worked into it, but it also has this, well, jittery feeling because we're using eighth notes, kind of a steady alternate picking approach, meaning we go down on the downbeat and up on the upbeat. Let me dig right into the exercise. Now, I just want you to isolate one measure on the tab. It's the very first measure, and I don't want you to get confused or feel overwhelmed by looking at the entire thing because that entire tab is all the same thing, like I've alluded to before. So pay close attention to this, and then you've got that whole piece of paper sitting in front of you. So we're gonna start on the 5th fret of the low E string, and I want you to use your middle finger for that particular note. And all you're gonna do is do a down up on that. 1 and, or down up. The next series of notes are all on the A string, and we're gonna fret the 4th, the 5th, the 6th, and the 7th. 4th with the index, middle on the 5th, ring on the 6th, pinky on the 7th. You'll do a down and up stroke on each of those notes, so it'll sound like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, or, and now keep in mind it doesn't start on the 1, it actually starts on the 2, but it's a down up stroke, so it'll be down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. So far we have this, starting on that 5th fret of the low E with the middle finger. Pretty easy so far. It almost feels like a chromatic exercise, and in a way, it kind of is a chromatic exercise. But this is one of the beautiful things about this particular kind of riff, we can call it, is that it takes the goodness of a blues bass line, but accentuate what the guitar is actually good at. We can drive these eighth notes to kind of propel the rhythm, and that's something that's really effective and sometimes undervalued, especially on the acoustic guitar. So to wrap this up, we're going to do a subtle position shift, and all the remaining notes are on the D string. So we're going to move our index finger to the 5th fret of the D, middle finger is going to tackle the 6th fret, ring finger the 7th fret. You'll do a down and up stroke on each of those notes, right? Like this. Down, up, down, up, down, up. Nothing too crazy. So if we put it all together, I'm going to go ahead and count along with it so you get a sense of this full entire riff. I was almost going to call it a bass line, but we'll call it a riff to keep it in the guitar world. So here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. That's it. Okay, so check this out. That was the first 2 measures on the tab, okay? This is a 2-measure riff, and all you're gonna do is repeat that again. That takes care of the entire first line of the tablature. It's pretty awesome, right? So let's look at the second line. Well, the second line, all we have to do for the first 2 measures of the second line is drop what we did a string towards the floor. So we're gonna start on the 5th fret of the A string, down up there, move to the 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th of the D string, position shift, 5th, 6th, 7th on the G string. Right? So if we look at the first chunk of that second line, it'll sound like this. So you play that once, and then if you look at the remainder of the second line, it's the same exact thing that we did in the first line, which is pretty awesome. Now the last line, this is where things get, I'll say subtly tricky, but it's just more of an observation. Something I want you to point out is that since this is a 2-measure lick, and we're not spending a full measure on the first two chords of the remainder of the blues progression, we're going to just chop it in half. Okay, so let me explain. The first measure of the third line is going to actually start on the 7th fret of the A string, right? So down up there, and then we'll do the 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th, I believe. Actually, we're just going to stop at the 8th. We're not even going to make it to the 9th. So it'll go that 7th fret of the A string, down, up. Then the 6th on the D, 7th on the D, 8th on the D. And it kind of leaves you hanging like, it's like, oh, I want to complete this phrase. But the cool thing is, we're going to switch to the next riff now. So we're going to drop that same pattern back 2 frets towards the headstock. Starting on the 5th fret of the A string, we'll go 5th on the A, 4th on the D, 5th on the D, 6th on the D, and then that leaves the remaining 2 measures of the last line to do the full entire riff. Pretty simple stuff when you break it down. Now, when you look at the entire tab, it's like, whoa, there's so much going on. I got to learn this whole thing. I got to memorize it. Not really, because essentially what you're doing here is learning the riff once and then kind of chunking it out and saying, okay, the first line is made up of 2 times through that first riff. The second line is the same riff, just dropped towards the floor, 1 set of strings, starting on the A string instead of the low E. The second line wraps out using the initial riff that we learned. And then the last line contains little half chunks of that riff. So it's nothing too crazy. It's just nice to kind of cite what's actually happening here. It's one riff moved in different locations. So take your time with this. One thing I want to caution you to be aware of is that there's a tendency to want to speed up, especially with these rapid eighth notes. Try your best not to fall into that trap. It's really easy to start at one tempo, and then when you're finished, realize, whoa, I'm going way faster than I intended. So just be very, very cautious of picking up speed as you go through this. So I want you to stay nice and steady, Eddie, and ultimately that'll lead to comfort and the ability to play this in time with some panache, if you will.